Covering Hilo to Kona, Hawi to Naalehu, this is Big Island Video News. I'm Stephanie Salazar. Today, Hawaii Governor Neil Abercrombie will deliver his State of the State address set for 10 a.m. at the Hawaii State Capitol House chambers. It will be his fourth State of the State address. The governor has already shared his administration's accomplishments over the past 3 years in anticipation of the speech. Being that it's an election year for the governor, he will certainly take time to address his administration's strides in restoring the state's fiscal health, strengthening the local economy, and paving the way for universal access to preschool in Hawaii. It's also customary for the head of state to lay out his plans for the upcoming legislative session during the speech. Meanwhile, Hawaii County's mayor is off to Washington, D.C. Managing Director Wally Lau will take over as mayor, while Billy Kenoi attends the U.S. Conference of Mayors' 82nd winter meeting in the nation's capital. Kenoi is chair of the Hawaii Conference of Mayors and will attend the meeting with Honolulu Mayor Kirk Caldwell, Maui Mayor Alan Arakawa, and Kauai Mayor Bernard Carvalho. Mayor Kenoi is also a member of the U.S. Conference of Mayors National Advisory Board. On Monday, more than 900 Kaiser Permanente Hawaii physicians and staff spent the Martin Luther King Jr. holiday volunteering their time working on community projects across the state. On the Big Island, Kaiser employees joined volunteers with the Hawaii Island School Garden Network and Food Corps Hawaii, weeding, tilling, and planting in the sustainable gardens at both Kealakahe Intermediate and Waimea Middle School. In today's newscast, the mayors want the right to consider a 1% general excise tax raise, and today a county council committee will talk it over. Also in council committee, a rehash of the mayor's proposed ethics reform, the imperiled Alaloa Trail within the planned Kohalakai subdivision, and watch out, another GMO debate is on the agenda. On the record, state lawmakers are trying to figure out what went wrong in the failure to stop the spread of the little fire ants to Oahu and Maui, and the end of the base enrollment for Kanai Olowalu, the native Hawaiian role. Today, the Hawaii County Council holds committee meetings in Kona. On the Finance Committee agenda is a discussion regarding a proposal by the Hawaii Council of Mayors to the state legislature, which would allow the counties to increase the general excise tax up to 1%. Brenda Ford introduced the communication. Last Wednesday, Mayor Billy Kenoi appeared with the state's other 3 mayors before the Senate Ways and Means and House Finance Committees, where he made the case on behalf of Hawaii's county leaders for the right to raise the tax if each county should so choose. The chair of the State House Finance Committee, Representative Sylvia Luke, said she noticed the proposal was not on the Hawaii State Association of Counties legislative package.
So the question is, are all the county councils in agreement in raising the GET to 1%? And wouldn't it be a better approach for the county council to pass a resolution saying that they are all going to vote for an increase in GET and then come back to the legislature? Because I think the last thing we want to do is go down this road and authorize the county to do perhaps a speculative tax in the future and tie the hands of the state to look at a tax increase on the part of the state.
I hear your concern that, why should the legislature, go through a very contentious and challenging vote to provide to the counties only to have the counties subsequently reject that.
So maybe the part of the approach should be if the various mayors could check back with their various council members and see if there could be some type of agreement or a resolution passed by the counties first, and then we will take it up, take a look at whether we want to entertain it. But without that, I think it's still too premature.
It's part of the package. HSAC just voted on it.
Oh, well, so a couple of things. We've just received word that HSAC did vote and has made the general excise tax part of the package. But to strengthen our request to the legislature, I'm certain that all of us could go to our respective county councils, ask for a resolution to then, within the next few months, come back to the state legislature. I think it's a fair request. Madam Chair, and something that I'd be more than willing to do because it is a serious request, because it is a revenue-generating request, because there is an impact on our communities, all of our communities. It's a fair request and something that I and my fellow mayors would be more than happy to go and do.
The County Finance Committee meets to discuss the proposal 11 a.m. Tuesday at the West Hawaii Civic Center. The state GET is currently at 4%. Round 2 of Mayor Billy Canoy's quest to bring some ethical reform to county government kicks off at the same Finance Committee on Tuesday. Bill 181 would prohibit a county officer or employee who owns a business from contracting for goods and services with any county agency. It also prohibits elected officials from appearing on behalf of any private interest before any county agency. The council has considered these reforms before. A few years ago, under a different group of district representatives, the bill was voted down after a prolonged back and forth with the County Board of Ethics.
I resent, as a public figure, the assumption that I am a crook.
The bill stalled in part due to the input of Randy Riley, a Department of Public Works Division head who, at the time, had a controlling interest in Kama'aina Pumping, a dry well pumping company that has contracted with the county for more than 10 years for millions of dollars. Riley unsuccessfully ran in 2008, the year Canoy first won the seat. The first time around, Canoy's ethics proposal divided the council.
Started bidding on his contract in 1996 when I moved over from this island. I had the contract currently when I was hired in the county originally. In 2002, I believe I even talked to either Lincoln Ishida or Gerald Takasi before I even took the job and said, is there going to be a conflict here? They said no. They hired me. A year later, a complaint was made from a company in Oahu. I had to go before the ethics board. They cleared me. And now this is all coming back again. And I just feel like I'm being tried twice for the same thing, even OJ was only tried once.
Well, yeah, I think it's important to note that the contract has not been a continuous contract from 1996 to 2010. It goes out for sealed bids periodically. I think the controversy occurred maybe about a year ago when the person who wrote the specifications, and Mr. Riley had nothing to do with writing the specifications because he wasn't even in the same division. Somebody wrote the specifications and then somebody complained that the specifications was written in a way that only one company would qualify based on the fact that he had a history of doing these type of projects. So the mayor avoided that bid process, and it was reopened where people could bid and more companies bid, and then Mr. Riley was a successful bidder.
Mr. Riley has sort of become the face, if you will, of this particular issue that's been brought before us. I recognize that, from what I can understand anyway, that's unfortunate, and I certainly do not look at the case against or for Mr. Riley as being connected with this, and I'm trying to make that distinction, so please, any comments I make are made only to try to address what the mayor has put before us. Mr. Greenwell pointed out very clearly a comment that he made in the beginning of this. On the face, he was opposed because it seems to make politicians look like we're all crooks. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry. I don't consider myself a crook, but I do consider myself in a position in which the public trusts sometimes the perception by the general public is that we don't do everything correctly all the time. I recognize that. And I think Mayor Canoy recognizes as one of his policies in his campaign that he was going to try to do whatever he could to dispel that perception in whatever way, shape, or form he could.
The bill was killed in 2010 by a 5-2 council vote.
The applicant does not believe that the Alalo exists, even though that line is on the map?
Not legally on our property, that's correct.
Not legally.
The contentious grant of easements proposed by Kohala Kai LLC to the county for public access purposes is also on the Tuesday Finance Committee agenda, but no decision is expected. The community is worried that an older pathway located on the property that is said to be the historic Alaloa Trail could be lost to development. The Finance Committee has already discussed and postponed the measure. Kohala Councilwoman Margaret Willey also held a site visit on the Kohala Kai property with the landowner, National Park Service, and adjacent residents of the Kailapa Hawaiian Homestead. The current plan before the County Council was already approved by the Planning Department.
So the court made it very clear that the state owns this trail, and so therefore I think that this council should be wondering why the DLNR is not participating in this, why members of the community have not known about this.
Although the alignment has been widened to accommodate different modes of transportation, historic maps show the existing Jeep Road alignment to be the original Alaloa. As such, this verified ancient trail remnant segment falls in the Alakakai NHG Comprehensive Management Plan highest priority for trail segments.
I think the actions of the planning department or the planning directors were abominable. Absolutely abominable in this case.
According to Willey, the landowner has requested the resolution be postponed until February 4th in Hilo. The councilwoman says she will instead propose this agenda item be postponed until the next Kona Council Committee meeting on February 18th. Apparent mix-ups like the one concerning the Alaloa and Kohala Kai subdivision might be prevented if Bill 182 is passed by the County Council's Planning Committee. The law would mandate that the planning director conduct a site visit of the designated property to verify that the information within the preliminary plan is complete and accurate prior to approval. Revisions would be made by the subdivider after consulting with the planning director. The Planning Commission already has the authority to hold site visits, and it sometimes does, especially if the issue is contentious, like in 2010 when the Leeward Planning Commission conducted a site visit on a property within the Kamoa Point complex on Holualoa Bay, which was slated to become a multi-story condo. The bill will be discussed at 9 a.m. Tuesday at the West Hawaii Civic Center. And the GMO debate returns to the Hawaii County Council on Tuesday. The Public Safety and Mass Transit Committee will again take up Bill 109, banning genetically modified organisms from the Big Island. The mayor already signed a different GMO bill into law last year. That bill was introduced by Councilwoman Margaret Willey, and it created a national stir when it was finally approved by the council after months of heated debate. Tuesday's bill is the other GMO prohibition bill. It was introduced by Councilwoman Brenda Ford and is considered to be even more restrictive because it sunsets the use of GMO papaya, which are currently grandfathered in under the current law.
But when you hear an attorney, a developer, or a politician say, I have no plans to do X, trust me, 1 second after they get what they want, they go, I changed my mind. So Monsanto or any other biotech company coming in and saying, we're not going to come to Hawaii Island, plant anything, you know what that is. You know that is a bald-faced, you know what. Okay, it's going to happen. They're taking over the whole planet. Why would they leave us alone? We've got 3 or 4 seasons of growing time here. They will come in. They have come in. They've sold product here and it's being grown here. So that's something you need to think about. I would like to say the reason that I support my bill, I'm not adverse to Margaret's bill. We've got to do something. But I would like to have amended my bill to take care of some of the issues. In Bill 109, we have an enforcement capability. We have named a department that will be responsible, and we have enforcement. Margaret's bill has 0 enforcement. There's not even a department named to do enforcement. Because of that, her bill, if it passes, and I'm sure it will, if her bill passes, it's an oh well, so what bill? It doesn't mean anything. The minute it passes the final vote, the biotech companies can move right in, and if we say you're not supposed to do that, they'll go, so what? There's no penalty for that. You don't even have a department to do any investigation. There's no department to even do the registration. That's how empty the bill is as far as enforcement. If you don't have that portion, you can't do the job.
The committee already voted the measure down on September 6th, but then moved to reconsider the bill on September 23rd because, according to policy, the measure should have first gone to the Environmental Management Commission for their input. The Commission gave Bill 109 a negative recommendation, and it is expected that the Public Safety and Mass Transit Committee will do the same during its 2 p.m. meeting. State lawmakers are trying to figure out how, with all the money spent and awareness promoted, little fire ants still made it to Oahu and Maui. The invasive pest, which produce painful stings, is considered one of the biggest biological threats to Hawaii. The tiny ant is originally from South America, but it has become well established on Hawaii Island, especially East Hawaii. The little fire ant hitched a ride on some hapu'u, and the Department of Agriculture admits they don't inspect the Hawaiian tree fern because it falls outside their inspection jurisdiction of propagated plants. The issue was recently discussed with Department of Land and Natural Resources Chair Bill Ila at an informational briefing at the state capitol.
When the koki frog had a colony on Kauai, the Invasive Species Council through Karen Granderson was very diligent at stopping the spread. I don't know that we can stop it on the Big Island. If there is a way, then I don't know that we found it yet for the Big Island legislators, but now this fire ant is becoming the problem, and it's a lot more dangerous than the koki frog.
I would agree with you, and whatever funding that we can assist with, given the parameters of the budget that the governor has allowed me to present to you, we will do the best we can. I would encourage, as partners in the budget process, that you help us take a look at the additional funds that are in the conveyance tax, and perhaps that provides an opportunity for some additional funding.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Thank you. Senator English, you had a follow-up.
Yes, thank you. Bill, just to follow up on this, with the fire ants, I guess on Maui, my understanding was one department knew of it but didn't tell the other departments. And then, the other departments are finding about it. So this is a non-monetary issue. It's a communication one. So if agriculture finds it, they should be letting the DLNR know, they should be letting the Invasive Species Councils know, etc. And that wasn't what happened. They sort of said, yeah, we found it, Well,
so the Department of Agriculture found it through the sale of hapu ferns, and so they took steps to immediately quarantine the places of sale, and they're trying to determine, where it was sold, and so we can identify areas.
But they didn't then follow through and let the other people who are coordinating all of these efforts know that they found it. You see, that's the break in communication that scares me, because yes, they found it, yes, they quarantined it, and they're going out looking for wherever the plants may have gone, but we have entire systems that we fund to deal with this, and if they're not going to share that information, they find out about it from word of mouth, they find out about it from
TV,
so the newspapers, the internet, wherever they get it. I guess what I'm getting at is that part of the reason that the legislator created the Hawaii Invasive Species Council was to create that interagency communication, so that when something like that is found, all the agencies know, everybody knows very quickly, and then, like the Maui Invasive Species Council can see if they see it out there anywhere. Other eradication efforts, the community can know that, okay, if you see this, this is what to look for. So, I took this as a test and therefore a failure of the system. So, it's not the monetary issue is a big part of it, but the communication part.
Senator English, I definitely agree with you that there was a breakdown in communication, and we identify that. We'll be taking steps to make sure that doesn't happen again.
Okay, would you please share that with us on how you plan to do that? Sure. Because the more transparent it is, the better it is for everybody. And I think, and I agree with you, Bill, that, okay, we learn from this, and that's the main thing, is we learn from that mistake, and then we don't repeat it when another species is discovered or something else. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
The Hawaii Invasive Species Council is an interdepartmental collaboration. The initial period of enrollment for Kanai Olowalu, the Native Hawaiian roll, has ended. More than 107,000 people signed up to rebuild the Hawaiian nation, according to the Roll Commission. The commission will now continue to process ancestry confirmations over the coming weeks. The number surged over recent weeks thanks to a contribution of more than 100,000 names from the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, who is charged with overseeing the effort. OHA CEO Dr. Kamana Opono Crab updated the legislature just a few days before the close of the registry.
Speaking of moving forward, the Hawaiian roll, how's the numbers, signatures, and sign-ups coming? Any update on that?
Thank you. As part of the Native Hawaiian Roll Commission, as was approved by Act 195, also known as Kanai Olowalu, OHA has continued to be a supporter of their work. January 19th is the final date for registration as part of the base roll. We anticipate that the Roll Commission will conclude its activities by May. Up until this point, OHA has cooperated and has submitted close to 100,000 verified names. And with the addition of the Native Hawaiian Roll Commission's outreach efforts, we conclude that we will reach likely 120,000 names or more by January.
Kanai Olowalu has spent millions in an attempt to build the registry. This week, we sat down with attorney Dexter Kaiama, who is handling the case of Kale Gumapak, who was evicted from his Hawaiian Paradise Park home in November after a foreclosure. We feature that story in a 5-part series here on Big Island Video News. The argument that Kaimana has been trying to make in court on behalf of Gumapak and other clients in Hawaii facing foreclosure is that the courts lack jurisdiction since he maintains the sovereignty of the Hawaiian Kingdom still exists. The story even made the front page of the Honolulu Star Advertiser recently, including details of Dr. Ke'anu Sai and his work on behalf of the Hawaiian Kingdom at the international level. Here at Gumapak's new home in Hawaiian Paradise Park, not too far from his foreclosed residence, for an update on Gumapak's case.
What I can tell you is that I continue to represent Mr. Gumapak in the international arena. I think as your video series is accounted, I've filed complaints with the International Criminal Court as well as the German authorities on behalf of Mr. Gumapak against the bank, and in this case Deutsche Bank, its attorneys, as well as all those entities that have been involved in the unlawful foreclosure of Mr. Gumapak's properties, including the courts and the judges, as well as the sheriffs involved in the eviction of my client. To add to the complexity of the case, if I may, Mr. Gumapak, when he was evicted a few months back, was also arrested and charged with trespass upon his own property. That matter is presently moving forward in the district courts of the Puna district of the 3rd Circuit Court here in Hilo. I have filed on Mr. Gumapak's behalf a motion to dismiss the complaint for lack of subject matter jurisdiction, and I think your video series explains what that is. We are contesting the legal authority of this court and its jurisdiction over matters concerning people and property here in Hawaii. Now, with Mr. Gumapak's trespassing case, of course, the court has no lawful jurisdiction in the prosecution of Mr. Gumapak's trespass. And maybe perhaps if you ask me a question, I can better define it, but I think we've made the argument that because there is no lawful acquisition by the United States of the Hawaiian territory, as there is no treaty of annexation that the United States purports to have sovereignty over these islands by way of a joint resolution, which of course under both U.S. constitutional law as well as international law has no legal force and effect outside its own borders and in foreign territory. As Hawaii was an independent state and continues to be an independent state among the family of nations, U.S. legislation, including the joint resolution, has no force and effect here in Hawaii. As a result, the circuit courts, including the district court, which seeks to pursue the prosecution of Mr. Gumapak's case has no lawful jurisdiction. That motion is scheduled for a preliminary hearing before Judge Freitas on March 6th. Judge Freitas has provided the prosecution an opportunity to provide their response to the filed pleading by February 6th of this year, and then our reply is due on February 20th. At that time, the court will consider the setting of the motion itself for argument, as well as, and this is what's somewhat important, the court will consider our requests to provide expert witness testimony, that is the testimony of Dr. Keanu Sai, in the submission of the exhibits in the case, including the executive agreements calling for the restoration of the Hawaiian Kingdom, and all other legal documents, as well as legal precedent, which undeniably and undisputably proves that Hawaii continues to be an independent nation. Through inquiries made by Mr. Gumapak himself, and as well as by yourself, Mr. Corrigan, I've been referred to contacts allegedly representing Deutsche Bank to try and figure out who's responsible for the actual foreclosure proceedings against Mr. Gumapak and the eventual eviction from his home. I've received some information which seems to be a little bit perplexing, but that information seeks to somehow exonerate or exclude Deutsche Bank from the commission or from conducting the actions which resulted in the eviction. That information I've received is contrary, of course, to the legal pleadings that were filed, where Deutsche Bank was the named plaintiff seeking to foreclose and eventually obtaining the court orders to evict Mr. Gumapak from his home. But I am attempting to clarify who's responsible, and on Mr. Gumapak's behalf, I intend to make requests that whoever is responsible for that foreclosure action stop all further action while we attempt to try and resolve the foreclosure and eviction, and perhaps placing Mr. Gumapak back in his home. But as you said, some of that information is a little bit perplexing. So we need to go through with that, and we need to confirm who actually is responsible for the foreclosure of that home. The information I've received apparently leads, the person providing that information seems to believe that Ocwen Servicing Company perhaps is the party that was responsible for the foreclosure. Indications are is that Ocwen had some kind of promissory or some kind of power of attorney in which they had the discretion and the authority to move forward with the foreclosure proceedings. Again, now that is contrary to the actual legal pleadings which specifically named Deutsche Bank. So I'll need to get further clarification on that. Because as you know, in the filing of the complaint with both the ICC as well as the German authorities for violations of the Geneva Convention, we named Deutsche Bank because, of course, Deutsche Bank was the party named on the pleading. So if in fact it was not Deutsche Bank, or if in fact somehow Deutsche Bank did provide a power of attorney to some other entity to initiate and conclude foreclosure proceedings, that of course is important, not only in our attempts to resolve or maybe come to some kind of, how can I say, agreement to resolve the issues for Mr. Gumapak, but also in the proper reporting to the ICC as well as the German authorities.
This was the first weekend without Namaste, the white Bengal tiger and iconic animal that came to represent Hilo's County Zoo. Namaste's cage is now empty. The beloved tiger had to be euthanized last Thursday. The male tiger was the star attraction of the Pane'ewa Rainforest Zoo and Garden for 15 years. Namaste hadn't quite been himself the last year or so, and over the past several weeks he developed multiple health problems that caused his quality of life to deteriorate. Namaste was donated to the Pane'ewa Zoo in 1999 by Las Vegas magician Dirk Arthur. The tiger was 8 months old when he arrived on Hawaii Island. For 15 years, Namaste's daily afternoon feedings drew a crowd, and his birthday parties held every September attracted hundreds of attendees. He would usually be treated to a frozen bone cake or a pumpkin during the celebration. Namaste was buried Thursday in his enclosure, and the spot will soon be marked with a monument. The county says the zoo also has plans to welcome another tiger after making some renovations to the tiger habitat to accommodate a younger animal. Gone but not forgotten, Namaste the tiger. Aloha oi.